You're listening to All Things 3D, where we talk about the world of fabricating, designing, and capturing in the third dimension.
Hey everybody, it's All Things 3D, and I'm Chris, this is Mike, and today we have a guest crasher, John Schneider, joining us from Fargo, North Dakota. Hi John.
Hey, how's it going?
Pretty good. And we're on another Friday special edition episode of Week in Review. Today is January 30th, 2015, and we're going to talk about what happened in the 3D world this week. So, should we hop right into it?
Sure. Well, actually, before then, I'm going to run a little bit of the video that John put out, a couple of days ago.
Yep.
You got your LulzBot Mini. I had an opportunity to check or talk with them in CES, and it looks like you already have one. Kind of cool.
Yeah.
Here's my baby over here. She's printing away. She's always printing something.
What are you working on today?
Oh, just little designs for clients of mine. I do their CAD work, and then we do their rough iterations on this before we go up to the Stratasys and do kind of like the finer detailed stuff, if necessary. Actually, I came in this morning and I had I'm doing a molding project with a client, and I built his whole entire master on the LulzBot, and it was great, man. The thing just turned out so sweet.
Very cool.
Well, we'll get to that in a little bit, but I'll go ahead and drop right into John's camera. I've got his website behind me here. So essentially, from what I can understand, we make 3D printing better. So I'll let you kind of introduce yourself, and how do you make 3D printing better?
Yeah, so thanks, Mike.
You're welcome.
So at Fargo 3D Printing, one of the reasons that we got started is we saw that a lot of people were trying to get started with 3D printing, and it's not exactly the easiest hobby to get into. It's definitely something that's getting better, but there's still, like, when we talked to schools, they found that they wanted to be using 3D printing, but they didn't know how to get started. So we actually sell 3D printers. We manufacture replacement parts for some of the different machines. MakerBot, especially the Replicator 2 and 2X's, those are machines that they're kind of our bread and butter. We use those day in and day out. But we help people get started 3D printing. We help them when their machines go down. We help provide materials to make sure that they are able to keep printing. And really the goal behind all this is some of these people that use 3D printers will eventually change the world. So that's really the mentality at Fargo 3D Printing.
Awesome. That's really awesome.
Yeah, that sounds like a really great attitude, and I think that was part of our reason for getting started as well. We got into this from a business perspective, but just thought, hey, this is something great to talk about. So, as I said, I found you guys on YouTube and said, hey, another group that's fun and talks about 3D printing and takes the opportunity. And I'm looking at your list of accessories here.
And it looks like you carry consumables as well. So you sell consumables or sell machine parts. So as a local distributor, I mean, pretty much you've got a lot of people are going to be, I mean, more and more people getting into this industry all the time, every day. So yeah, absolutely an important part of the industry is the supply chain. So getting parts and materials, spools of filament out to the people that want to do it. That's an important part of the business.
Right, and even on the service side of things too, we have a couple of universities that, well, one of them has over a dozen 3D printers, and they're either MakerBot Replicator 2s or 2X's, and so we actually have a service agreement with them where we'll go and check the printers on a monthly basis because some parts do wear out. Sometimes in their print lab they'll have a machine that goes down and they just get so busy they set it to the side, and then that printer's not accessible by the students. So we make sure that it keeps up and running, and if there are any parts that need to be replaced, we're able to do that. So some of the machines are going on 2 years old, so keeping them in running shape is pretty important.
Right.
I see a lot of MakerBot Replicator 2s and 2X's in your photos here. Does that seem to be the mainstay in the educational market, or at least maybe in the lower 1 through or K through 12, or is that just because they were good photo opportunities?
Well, a little mix of both. It's unfortunate that MakerBot doesn't still sell the Replicator 2s. They are very they're pretty maintainable machines. So that was one of the things that we liked. Once you got them set up and dialed in, they would just keep working and working and working. And then if parts went down, they're pretty easy to replace, very, very user accessible parts to replace. They're newer generation, the 5th gen Z18. They're just not quite there yet. They just really aren't. I don't think they're ready for the mainstream. They're getting closer. They've fixed a lot of the problems that they had when they first came out. MakerBot had a lot of good intentions with the 5th gen, but the reality just sort of fell short. So they've been playing catch up, trying to get things back up and running.
So this looks like your team here. Who's the gentleman in the middle there? I guess you're off to the side, and then I think that's Jake in the background.
So Jake is in the orange, and then Todd, he's actually he's our newest hire. He helps us with a lot of our manufacturing and spare parts, and he also is he handles the largest portion of our shipping department as well. And then moving to the left, in the back, is Eric. He helps us out with. He's our multimedia intern. He does all the videos that are on YouTube. So he's the one that makes them look so good. That's definitely beyond what Jake and I are capable of doing. And then on the farthest left is Katie. She is our PR intern, so she helps us with our website copy, email newsletters, and social media.
Yeah, well, excellent. You got obviously, as you said, you've got some polished videos out there on YouTube. Looks like you have a happy group there. And did we kind of identify this already? There's a reason behind the name Fargo 3D Printing. I just thought you just picked it out of the air because you like the Fargo series, but in reality, John, you are from Fargo.
Yeah, we are located in that Fargo. So,
all right, give us some Fargo talk.
Oh, don't you know? Sometimes you just have to go out to the wood chipper and make sure that you got everything cleaned out, make sure there's no body parts still in there, and you got to make sure to cover up anything with some fresh powder, make sure that no one can see what happened.
Okay, you kind of mentioned
that
before
was a little.
That you're
That's a little much, man.
I'm not kidding. There are people that they have that strong of an accent. But yeah, we're very known for our long O. So North Dakota, Minnesota, all that stuff.
All right, you do it well.
Yeah.
And you mentioned before the show that the visiting center there has an actual wood chipper that you can stand in front of and take pictures. So, and I guess it's popular. So that's kind of weird. You know what's funny? I'm assuming because you're up there that you also watched the TV series Fargo. I really enjoyed it. I don't know why, but I don't remember a wood chipper at all in that.
No, there probably hasn't been, or at least not in that. But it's an interesting series. It's pretty critically acclaimed too, and it has a pretty strong fan base now.
Yeah, well, I'm one of those fans. It was very interesting and brought me back to Fargo. So again, and the fact that you've used that in your YouTube videos, dressing up really cold. So what is the temperature there?
Today, I think it's around 15 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm not exactly sure. We had a heat wave the last week. It was, I think, 40 degrees. Yeah, it was 40 degrees for a few days last week.
Oh, that sounds toasty.
Yeah.
We're in Central California.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. When it gets below 50, we've got to put it. So on that note, my opening theme was 3D printing in the freezing cold, and I don't know why I assumed you were here on the West Coast, but that's not the case, and it really is a reality. How do you print in the freezing cold? I mean, how do you do it?
Well, we have the benefit of being in a heated shop, so we don't have our printers it's not really a garage environment. But when we're printing with something in ABS, of course, having an enclosure really helps. We're working on designing some custom enclosures that made from extruded aluminum and acrylic and all that. But until then, when printing with ABS, sometimes just using the box that the printer came in and setting that around the printer, I mean that works well enough to keep that heat in.
Yeah, and it's funny. If you look at LulzBot's they have a Ojai guides. Ojai, like the meme Ojai. They have one on. They call it the cat guard because like if your cat's getting in and messing up with your prints. But they don't actually sell the parts, so you have to go and acquire the parts. But then they've got this really nice manual on how to put together a really nice acrylic or plexiglass enclosure around your printer. So, any of our listeners that are out there that want to like check out a really nice kind of like enclosure design that's more permanent than like cardboard, you might go out to LulzBot's. They have under their support tab, you can go down and hit on guides. They're high guides, and then for their cat enclosure, it's a really nice guide, and it looks like a really nice enclosure that I think I'll probably be building for mine pretty soon.
Right.
Well, it's nice to hear that you're doing that, John. I know with my replicator too, I just pretty much, I don't know, put some plastic over the sides, but I've seen on eBay that you can get a door for it and a few other things. And I found that over time, in fact, I have kind of like a screen mesh in the front of mine to provide less circulation for the whole unit, but not have it completely blocked off, and that seems to help as well. But as we mentioned, we're out in California, and I do have a couple of these printers in my garage, and I have a heater in it in order to maintain better printing, especially in the mornings. But man, I'm imagining if I had a garage out there, I would need a industrial size furnace to keep my garage warm.
Yeah.
Okay, well, enough about Fargo right now. Let's kind of get right into the news before we make this into another hour and a half to 2 hour show. So, Chris, take us into our first item, please.
Yeah, first item here for the day is one that I'm kind of fired up because I was a backer. Here's Meshup by Euphoria. And it's a 3D printing. It's kind of like an alternative to NetFab, and I backed them back in 2012. We haven't really seen much from them, and as you can see down here, they estimated delivery March 2013, and they kind of fell off for a bit, and it was like my first Kickstarter where I didn't really, the people kind of fell off, and I didn't really, and I've done quite a few Kickstarters by now, and I was kind of like, hey, where are you? I kept emailing them, and they even have my name displayed on their website, where they put the backers, some of their backers' names, and it's a piece of software that's kind of an alternative NetFab. It's kind of like Mesh Mixer meets NetFab. Lets you repair models. Envelope models, make sure they're watertight. That was kind of how it was pitched. And I think the company's out of like Norway or something like that. But yeah. Today I got an update that they went beta. So they have a full beta download now, open beta for us backers. And it looks like they've actually implemented quite a bit of functionality. Looks like you can finally import your own models. They had some alpha releases where they had basically their models you could bring in, and it was fairly limited. So I'm kind of excited to see what what the software offers, and kind of get my hands on kind of playing around.
Let me add a little bit of backstory to this. If you remember, I just did an interview at CES with Stuart, who is the CEO of Fuel 3D. And one of the things that we followed in the news is that Euphoria actually was the software company to allow them to do their stitching. And I just thought that was kind of funny when they were brought on. This Kickstarter kind of fell off the radar, and it was one of the questions I asked them. I said, well, is one of the reasons you can actually put out the hardware right now, but there's still a delay in the software is because of Euphoria. How are they working out? I know in their Kickstarter they kind of fell off the radar, and they said no, they're moving along well, and we should have a great product. So I'm glad to see that they're continuing to work with their Kickstarter as well. Who knows? Maybe it was an incentive when I asked that question that it went back to them. But I'm glad to see that they're moving forward. I actually backed them as well, but I also use Rhino, and they had a Rhino plugin, so I just traded for that. But so glad to see that. So maybe next week you can get on and give us a little bit of a rundown on it.
Sure.
So let's see. I was going to go into mine, but John, how about you go ahead and talk about your news item? Obviously, you have a great item, and you have a YouTube for it, and that's the unboxing of the LulzBot.
Yeah. So the LulzBot Mini is something that we had been looking forward to the release of for quite some time. I know LulzBot initially wanted to release it back in, I think it was going to be early December, but they they had a great review in Make magazine for their TAS 4, so they wanted to make sure that they definitely kind of rode that wave of the good review. But the LulzBot Mini is, I mean, it's a fantastic printer. It has a build envelope of 6 by 6 by 6.2 inches. It has a heated build plate, and it has a really unique auto leveling system. So I know that there are other printers out there that have an auto leveling system where they have a sensor that's sitting right next to the extruder or right next to the hot end, and then that will, it's a proximity sensor, so it'll go and probe about 9 different spots on the build platform, and then it will automatically compensate for any unevenness as it prints. Now the LulzBot, what they have, if you see the very back part of that build plate, there's a black strip, and inside of that black strip is a piece of fabric. So the printer will preheat to about, I'd say, 140 degrees Celsius, and then it will scrub the nozzle on that fabric strip to get any loose filament or any previously melted filament off of the nozzle. Then the nozzle will go down and touch the 4 washers that are in the 4 corners of the build plate, and when it touches each of those washers, it completes a circuit. So it will know where it's at in space, and then similar to the probing on the other printers, it will know where, it'll automatically compensate for any unevenness in the build plate as it's printing. So when we did the
go ahead. I'm sorry, John. No, I was going to say, so unlike some of the other bed sensors where it's a micro switch, they're actually using the continuity between the print head and the bed to provide that circuit closure. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yep, yeah, that's correct. And I believe they collaborated heavily with SparkFun on getting that figured out. So when we were unboxing the printer, well, for one, LulzBot does a really fantastic job of packaging their printers. There's a lot of heavy foam. When I was actually trying to take it out of the box, I was trying to take it out of the box on my own, and you can see I struggle for about 30 seconds just trying to get it out of the foam and trying to get it lifted out. And inside the box, you see those heavy foam blocks on the inside. Those actually were what were catching on the inside of the box. But I did get it out, and the things that LulzBot includes with all their printers, they have a nice toolkit. So the one on the LulzBot Mini it's not quite as robust on the one as what comes with the TAS 4, but you still have the basics. You have a tweezers, pliers, you have a dental pick, and a metal brush for cleaning out the extruder, the drive gear. And then some of the other things that they include are they have a really great quick start guide, and I've seen quite a few different printers, and their quick start guides, some of them have really good documentation but become overly technical very quickly. So if you're a beginner trying to get started with a printer, it gets to be really overwhelming. But on the LulzBot Mini, it's very clear, very well written, has great pictures that guide you through everything. And on top of the quick start guide, they have a poster. It's I'm trying to think. It's like an artistic rendering of the LulzBot Mini, but it has a glossary for all the different parts on there. So if you're a beginner and you're not familiar with what an extruder is, or what the drive motor is, or what the hot end is, it will point out all of those things, and then it'll give definitions for some of the common 3D printing terms. So it does a really good job of onboarding someone who's never 3D printed before.
Yeah,
but, I mean, really, it's
a great printer.
Well, not only a great printer, but obviously excellent support and an educational infrastructure as well. So as you said, John, if you're new to this, you can pretty much go from zero to printing and actually learn something from it. Which, I think the MakerBot, as you said, with the Replicator 2, they were going in that same direction, but then they fully enclosed the environment to make it more turnkey, and I don't know if that's been the most successful direction. As you indicated, they've had some trouble, and I think the more you know about your machine, the more accessible the parts. Like you said, I liken this to the 80s, maybe even earlier, the cars where you tinkered with the carburetor and things like that.
Right.
And there were a lot of manuals that you could get for your car in order to make that happen. So I don't think the fully closed right now, as you said, is working well enough, because I don't think the technology is that easy to work with. So kudos to them. LulzBot has been in the news a lot. They were great at their booth when we went through a lot of these their products, and I'm pausing a little bit because your your producer for this has done a really good job in clarifying, and obviously I turned off your voice, but you emphasize what he's showing on his video there. So really good. Again, go out to Fargo Printing out on YouTube to actually see the full breakdown. I got open box, not breakdown. You're not actually breaking it down. But you know, we could do the iFixit equivalent of actually tearing one of these apart and talking about piece by piece. Actually, iFixit, I don't know if you're familiar with them. Yep. They're here in our neck of the woods. Actually, they're in San Luis Obispo, and I know quite a few of the people. They actually support us with their screwdriver set. That I'll get you one if you want one for coming on. So I'll send one to you, John. Okay, well, thank you for that, John. And then I will get into my item, if I can get out of this video here. That's one of the problems doing things live. Okay. Who has heard of this? My lawyer sent this to me, and I thought, wow, I think more people need to be aware of this petition. Actually, it came out, or at least the article came out on November 3rd, 2014. But, you know, we've talked about this several times, Chris, how some of the 3D manufacturers and even the big wigs like Stratus have limited what you can use for material. And, John, because you actually provide material, I think it's important for our audience and anybody else to spread the news, to get this petition moving forward, to prevent manufacturers from using software and roadblocks to limit you to only their material. And what they're trying to do is put this under the what do you want to call it? The software regulations that prevent people from making copies, and it really are copyright. Let's see. Well, you can go back and read the article. It'll be in the show notes, but. Essentially, it's funny, they call it feedstock. I've never heard that term for printer material, but I guess feedstock works.
They're like fish. Yeah. Our 3D printers are like fish, and they just need feed.
Yeah. But, you know, a lot of the things in here, the DMCA Act, they're trying to put this under, you know, that this is proprietary, this goes with our printer, and if you violate it, you're violating the DMCA. And they're trying to push that, no, you're not. I think a person should have the affordability to be able to use whatever material they want to, and they shouldn't be able to use a law that really doesn't apply to them in order to minimize what you can work with. So this is out there. Download the file, and I don't know who you would submit it to. I don't even know if it's still open for activity, but as like I said, my lawyer sent it to me, and I think it's something that we should be aware of, that we're trying to close that door and prevent people like John, and you, Chris, you provide material as well, that it's outside of it. And as you know already with your Stratasys, you are really locked in, and they can really, I'll use the term, gouge you. And we have actually talked to some other smaller print companies have gone in the same direction. Even though I really like the way the Cube Pro is shaping up, they also lock you into their material and do something similar to this.
Well, and it's not even so much the cost. Like the cost, I kind of got over that hump. It's like I basically, you know, my customers pay for a product, and it's like I look at it as like any consumable. Is I mark it up, and if I can save money, that would be great for the consumer. Obviously, I probably would sell more. I would have more people booking the Stratasys over the other machines that I have in the office. But the real bummer is the fact that there's all these other materials for all these new machines that are, you know, 13, like this LulzBot, you know, that's $1,400 delivered to your door, and you can print all of the materials that are available. Whereas I have this gigantic, you know, machine that's as expensive as a you know, BMW, and it's very limited. It only prints ABS Plus and engineering grade ABS, which is great for a lot of stuff. But I wish that it printed others. You know, it could print some of the better materials like nylon or you know, polycarb or some of these. And they have bigger machines that do that, but they want $16,000 per material that you add. They want to add a bay charge to it, and so it's like a kind of a scheme that I don't know. I don't think that strategy. I think they're going to have to get real with their with the consumer demands, you know, and understand that, hey, competition is here, and you know, these alternative machines are out there, and you're not going to stop them.
Well, what's important
Well, and
about this petition is make. I'm sorry, I'll get right to you, John. Is that this petition is there to protect us so that they can't use the law in order to push forward actually a strangulation on what materials you work with. So, John, you were going to comment, and I was going to ask you to help comment on this.
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, I think it's important that they can't block what material that you use, but at the same time, it's kind of back to your comparison. Your comparison with the car is a lot of high-end sports cars. You can't just put any type of gasoline in there. I mean, you can't put in an ethanol 87 and expect the same type of performance.
Right.
I mean, when you're dealing with a $200,000 machine, and I know Stratus is they kind of have less expensive machines than that, but when you're dealing with something that's $40,000 and up, and I mean, if you're dealing with materials that aren't tuned or the printer's not tuned, it doesn't know exactly how to operate with it. A lot of customers aren't like us. They don't understand how the different materials interact. I mean, you compare when you look at the LulzBot machine, it can work with a wide variety of materials, but out of the box, I mean, the profiles it has set up are for high impact polystyrene, ABS, and PLA. Otherwise, it's your user you have to work with it a lot more. It's not a nice out-of-the-box experience. You have to experiment a lot more with it, which is, again, it's fine for people that want to take the time, and I'm one of them. Like I think the materials that the LulzBot is capable of printing with is great, but people who purchase a LulzBot machine also know what they're getting themselves into. They understand that they're going to be working with the machine more than, say, what MakerBot aims to do, at least, or what 3D Systems aims to do with its desktop line of printers, which is, okay, you take the cartridge, you put it in, and it just works. Now, the user experience is not actually that easy on the 3D Systems machines or with the MakerBot machines, but I feel like they're going after different markets.
Yeah, and you're right. Yeah. And there's a warranty. There is the inherent warranty issues of, hey, if you have a warranty and we're covering your parts, then like you can't be going and clogging it up and trying to put cheese through it or something. It's like
it identifies that. It does identify that you still, if you use something that they don't find acceptable, or if you don't use their content, you can still void the warranty.
Sure.
What they're concerned is,
right,
is using software or tools to prevent you from going that direction. You make the point about high performance cars, but so somebody who buys one who's got the money, who just wants to put in gas and, like you said, identifies a particular type of gas, otherwise you could possibly ruin it or create some problems with tuning. At the same time, you could actually go with a higher performing gas that may be off market or additive. So I can see it from one perspective, but to limit it. And the other point is flexibility. And what else? They talk about the 2D printing market. There was an onrush of providing different toner capacities from different outside vendors, as well as inkjet, and Epson and a few others have really tried to limit that capability. And in some cases, it's worth it, because some of these people who came on the market rushed their product out there, was horrible, ruined their printers, and then who gets tagged with it? The 3D, not 3D, the printer companies. So, I mean, I can see both sides, but at the same time, I don't think that they should build in and use existing laws. They should define a new one specifically for the 3D printing market. But I thought that was a good item to bring up and pass on to others, so that we do have some freedom, especially us as hobbyists, to be able to work forward. And as one of the other points they mentioned, if we don't have this, how do we come up with more innovative materials? And if we are stifled, so I look at both sides of that. So, Chris, let's get on the MatterControl. They've got something really cool that came out on the market, right?
Yep, I definitely, one of my favorite companies here in California, MatterControl, or Matter Hackers, came up. They have a piece of software I use day in, day out. Really great piece of software that just keeps my LulzBot printing humming along, and it has all kinds of great features, and it's a really rapidly developing piece of software. That's what I really like about it, is they're very active on GitHub and yada yada yada. Anyways, yesterday they released a little device called the MatterControl Touch. It's a standalone 3D printer controller based on the Android platform, and you can go find out about it over at matterhackers.com and clicking onto their store and checking out their, just type in MatterControl Touch. MatterControl spelled one word, and you can kind of see it. It has a camera. It'll even text you updates. You can query it from your phone, and they've got a 30-day, and it's $249. For a couple days more, they'll have it at $249, and so it's a real nice piece of software. And they've even got a nice little. So here's showing off some of the features. It's got a simple setup. If you've ever set up a printer, sometimes the first time you set up a printer, it can be kind of a pain in the butt. But MatterControl makes it really simple. It's just simple dialogues. You just click, click, click. It even does automatic print leveling without even having sensors built in. One of the things I really, really like about MatterControl is you can do bed leveling, automatic bed leveling, without the need for any sensor. Whether so it'll automatically level itself just with a 3-minute process using a piece of notebook paper. It'll do SMS and email notifications, and then, like I said, it has an onboard camera, so it'll send you updates. And the software is MatterControl. It's free software, but this is the whole platform. This is everything you need to be plug and play with any of the current printers on the market, or most of them anyways, even though there's a list down here of currently supported ones, which is a pretty huge list. In the video, they even show, in this video here, they show getting started with a LulzBot Mini. So they have LulzBot Mini. They have for this video, and they kind of show it plug and play. They just take a brand new LulzBot Mini, plug it right into MatterControl, and by the end of the 5-minute video, they are printing on it.
So you said that this was Android based?
It's Android based. So they have been working hard on their platform to make it cross-compatible on all the different operating systems. They just released a Linux version, so I don't know if the Android version is like some new. I really don't know too much about Android, so I don't know if they had to like compile a whole different piece of software for it, or but it looks
called forked.
Forked, yeah. So. Yeah, but I mean, they have a Mac version, a PC version, and they just released a Linux version, and now it looks like an Android version of their software, and so it obviously they're working hard to make it available on all different platforms, and here it is printing. So pretty fun, pretty cool.
My question is, I have a few 7-inch, 8-inch. Android tablets. I'm wondering if I can just get the software instead of having to go out and buy another Android tablet. So I'll have to look into that. John, do you use this product, or I noticed that you have Simplified 3D in your show notes, but
yeah. So we haven't used MatterControl yet, but it's something that we're looking into. I know one of the things that we're just starting to use now is Octoprint. So I just got in a Raspberry Pi yesterday. So it's another method of remotely controlling your 3D printer. I think it's really interesting seeing that now that the desktop 3D printing market has matured a little bit more, you're starting to see more aftermarket suppliers. I mean, we're one of them for parts for some of the printers, but starting to see people that are making a product out of the software to control the printer and making that end of things better. Because for a long time you had Slicer and you had Print Run, or what's the other one? Repetier host.
Yeah,
Pronterface, yeah. So, and they're good tools, but admittedly they don't have the best user interfaces. And now you're taking a lot of that horsepower and making it so you have a much prettier, much more consumer acceptable interface for controlling the printers, which I think is great. Anything that makes the 3D printers more user friendly is fantastic.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of like what Apple did, is they kind of took the functionality that was already out there on a lot of OSs and they prettied it up.
Yep.
They made it appeal to everybody.
Well, it is an interesting slicer, and there's a lot of control with it, so hats off to them. Something that we did some time ago working with Steve, who has an SLA control program, is put it on a Windows tablet and kind of did the same thing, and with the little RP. So I'm glad that we're moving in this direction. And when we get to the projects, I'd like to talk more about that because I did something similar. I can't think of their name now, but hopefully it'll come to me when we get to that with a Raspberry Pi, and I really like that. And I think I also have an Octoprint, but I like this other version, AstroPrint. Have you heard of that one, John? So maybe when we get to that section, we'll talk about that as well. Okay, so John, why don't you get into your item? It appears Obama did something this year. We just started. Going to Boise State. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So this is interesting. I know Obama kind of made waves. I think it was when he had his 2012 State of the Union address when he brought up 3D printing. That was a big deal. I mean, I didn't think too much of it at the time. I was just, I had my little $400 3D printer kit, and I thought, okay, the president mentioned 3D printing, it must be a big deal. Well, then they have that, it's called NAMI, I think it's the National Additive Manufacturing Institute, and they're really working on making America known for 3D printing. Sort of what happened with electronics in the 80s. Asia, Japan in particular, got really well known for that. So now I think they're trying to make America a 3D printing powerhouse, and having Boise State University, they have a lab dedicated to 3D printing, and you'll notice that it's not just the large industrial grade printers, it's not just Stratasys machines, but it looks like they have some Delta printers that they're working with.
That's 3 row stocks.
Yeah, that's a row stock in the background.
Yeah. So just having this focus on 3D printing, I think, is huge, and with the big push towards STEM-based education, really making the United States back into a manufacturing powerhouse. Not the same way that China is a manufacturing powerhouse, but I think with this type of advanced manufacturing, you're going to see a lot more reshoring of jobs that previously were offshored. So I think it's a really big deal.
Well, I think it's important, and we also have an international guest that we bring on, and we've been covering China as well, and they're not standing still in the independent markets as well, and they're pushing the independent 3D printing just as much. In fact, in some cases, taking it on a huge macro level. Last week we covered 3D printing of apartments, so. They're running neck and neck with us, which I think is good. We've talked to some people in Korea and Taiwan who've come out with printers. It's, as I call it, I think it's a worldwide phenomenon, and I think it's cool because, as you said, it allows the user very quickly to bring an idea to the market or to themselves that just wasn't before available. So I appreciate, and hats off to Obama, seeing this and its potential and bringing in the news. So thank you, John. So I'm going to bring mine back into the medical realm. As you know, I've covered over, gosh, what has it been, almost a year now. As I mentioned before, my wife had a bony meningioma, and I tried to use some 3D technology, and there's a few articles written about it. So I've been covering this we've had interviews with some of the open source 3D slicers for the medical community and the research community. We've had people on from Rice University to talk about bioprinting. But these are always touching stories when you have young children given an opportunity that they didn't have before. And in this case, this person, it's St. Thomas, and I don't want to say the sad thing, and I'm hoping that things like what I've done and others in this country are pushing the FDA to see the potential here. But in Europe, they've already accepted 3D printing to be used in this where you can use it for planning and training, but they're also using it for actually replacement components too, and most of it now is being covered under the EU under their insurance plans, which I think is in an excellent direction. But in this particular case, they use MRIs and CTs to create what they call a mesh volume, or a solid model of this person's heart, this child's heart, and then from there they were actually able to plan outside of the person without opening them up how the best technique was in order to patch the heart. So this is, I talked about it, gosh, last November or December. Actually, it was December, which is ironic because like a week before or a week after my wife was diagnosed with her tumor, that in Malaysia they had used this same technique to create a skull and the brain and use that to help plan and train for the surgical procedure. So they created this, again, a 2-year-old, and then it allowed them to go through the process and then actually perform the surgery. And I guess she's doing better now.
Awesome.
Another plus story where
it's always good to hear one that has good news in it.
Yeah, and obviously a lot of but the other important thing to remember,
too.
and what we noticed in our articles that were printed on us, this is only part of it. It's somewhat sensational, but we have to give kudos to the doctors and the medical people who are embracing this technology and looking at better ways to get things done. In my wife's case, they use what they call a minimal invasive surgery process, where they went through her eyelid with microscopic tools or very micro tools and drills in order to minimize her suffering, as he would call it, and put more of the burden back on the surgeon. And I just think that's excellent that we have a medical community that is moving in that direction. I liken it to, gosh, I don't remember what the laparoscopic procedures that is now a mainstay where you don't open people up, especially around the abdominal area. We use these tools. It is a little more work for them, but saves us a lot of grief and trouble thereafter. So again, another plus there in the medical community. So thank you. So on that, let's get into our projects. John, I'm going to let you lead off on this. You know what? Something you guys got to remind me of, because sometimes I forget because I'm looking at it. If you don't, are you seeing my screen? Because what happens is when we actually go to Google Hangouts on air, it goes out to YouTube. If I don't click on it myself, then they don't see it. So I'll run through it real quick. Here's the article again.
Yeah, we saw it.
Daily Mail.
Yep. Yeah, right.
But the problem is the audience doesn't see it because I didn't click on it. So
no, you were up. You were up.
Oh, was I? Okay.
Yeah, you were up.
All right. All right. All right. So John, go ahead and lead off with your project of the week, and we'll go from there.
Yeah. So one of the things that I've been doing is I've been working with a tool called Simplify 3D, and I've been using it with my LulzBot TAS 4. So what Simplify 3D is, it's a slicer, but it's also a repair program. It has really nice features built into it for support generation, so you can manually select where you want your supports to be, and it's a super fast slicer. If you've ever used Kira before to slice something, think Kira speed, but maybe even slightly faster than that. So when you're printing a complex part or you're printing multiples of something, it makes it really fast. It is a paid program. I think the price on it now is $150, but it's a really useful tool. And so what I've been trying to do is get the. Oh, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say a side note is that we've actually had them on and we've talked to them, and we did a holiday how-to on FDM and had them on to actually go through the process. So I'm a big fan of Simplify 3D and use it on 2 of my printers. So I'm right in your camp there, and yeah, I'm interested to know more of how you can create a profile for the TAS.
Yeah, and I still don't have a final profile yet, but I've been doing a lot of calibration cubes, just doing some tests, because one thing I noticed, at least on the TAS, when you're printing the top surface layers, so let's say you have let's say that this plug is the box that I'm printing, it'll print everything fine until you get to the top surface layers, and then it's almost like the top surface won't connect to the perimeters. And so I'm trying to figure out how to fix that, and the solution right now seems to be increase the infill percentage. So the downside to that means that if you're using more infill, you're using more material, it takes longer to print, and
totally
I'm just trying to figure out that optimum setting for the best match between speed, materials used, and overall print quality. Because everything else, the print quality is really nice. The rafts that that Simplify 3D generates is fantastic. The only other printer I've used that generates rafts as well is an older version of MakerBot Desktop, where the rafts almost just peel away. You don't have to take a pliers to them or anything. They just come off really easily. And the rafts are a huge thing if you're printing any parts that don't have a lot of surface adhesion. So I know that there's some vases that I've tried to print that they'll have, it's almost like this type of, they'll have little legs that come down, so you maybe only have a contact area the size of a dime, and it's a print the size of a coffee mug. So you start dealing with, if you don't use a raft, you start running into issues with it peeling up from the bed mid-print. But yeah, there have been a lot of test prints that I've done. I think I'm getting close to a final profile just for medium settings, and then I got to go through the whole process again for fine detail and then for the low quality settings as well.
Yeah, I have to totally agree with you on Simplify 3D. I've been using it as my mainstay and actually have it hooked up to my printers. I've got a small Intel NUC that I use as my controller. And I have to say, I love it. I agree with you. It's very fast. There's a lot of granular control, but you can also set up profiles very quickly. So once you've got that out of the way, it's very easy to switch to them, which I found more difficult, especially in the MakerBot community where you've got to go into text files, and they need to do a lot more work there. And they told me at Simplify 3D that they have now profiles for all the MakerBots. So you're not stuck in the MakerBot environment if you don't need to be.
Right.
And then also the other thing that I think really important, and we've talked about on our show, is that the Flash Forge series, which are decent printers, but they leave a little bit to be desired in the slicer area, and they have profiles for them as well. And then the low end that are selling like hotcakes on Amazon are the 123, XYZ printers.
Yep.
The inexpensive ones that supposedly their slicer is horrid, but again, Simplify 3D has a profile for that and really can push some good prints out of it. So I totally agree with you. And what else was I going to bring up? Oh, the other thing is that if you do generate supports, they have manual support functionality.
Yeah.
That is excellent. And now I can judiciously go through where, in other applications, you just lay it over, you identify your angle, but then you get, in my opinion, more than you need. So
it's
now
all
you
or
can
nothing.
actually go there, and now you can go there and fine control that. And I really found that to be an important feature.
Well, and they do mention, I just saw under one of their features is variable density supports. So you get a lot of material savings. They say 68% material savings, because instead of having to generate super dense supports on the bottom, it only needs to be dense where it's interfacing with the model for easy breakaway. And so what they're doing is optimizing the support structures.
And it actually works. I mean, it's not just a theory. It does practically work, which is an important thing. Yeah, it's one thing to identify a feature. It's another thing is if it really works. And it does work. So, I'm not promoting a paid product, but in this case, you're getting your money's worth. So, John, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, it's... even if you look at the time that you end up saving slicing, if you're doing a lot of build plates that you have, say, 5 or 6 parts on there, just the time that you save on slicing is worth it, I think. I mean, on top of all the other features.
Yeah, totally agree. So, Chris, you've got some information to talk about your Rawstuck Max version 2 that you've been working on.
Yeah, so I've been let me bring it up here. I've been working pretty hard trying to get my Rawstock, trying to focus on getting my Rawstock V2 upgrade. So I had to fully disassemble my V1, and definitely found where most of the problems were happening. Had some cracked. I guess the V1 had plastic gear mechanisms for the belts, the little belt drive mechanisms that bolt onto the stepper motors. 2 of them were cracked because they were plastic in the V1, and the V2 is now they're aluminum, so that's definitely an upgrade. And the printer's going together really nice. I really like the way that it's very solid. I like the melamine construction. It's a low cost solution. Or kind of an approach to a 3D printer building something. So I really enjoy kind of tinkering on it and doing the wiring. And so today, hopefully, I'll have it mostly wrapped up by today. I worked on it. I've worked on it. I probably have about, I don't know, maybe 10 hours in to the build, and they say it's a 20-hour build. But see, I've already done one, so I think I'll probably come in at maybe 15 hours total, including the time it took me to disassemble the other one, which we all know it doesn't take long to disassemble something compared to how long it takes to assemble something. So be careful, be mindful when you're taking apart something, that when you take it apart, you can do it really fast, but when you want to put it all back together, it's going to take you some time. So.
You know, something that I do now when I take things apart is I have my phone out and I take constant images, so that way I have a visual image of where I was at in my breakdown. Because, you know, I'm getting older now, my memory doesn't work like it used to, and sometimes I go, what is that I just took apart? No, it's not that bad yet. So, you know, a tip out there, just pull your phone out, make some snapshots, and you can refer to them when you want to go back to them. The other thing is iFixit makes a little magnetic pad that you can put your parts on, and it's organized like a grid so that you can sort your parts on it, and it keeps them, well, only for ferrous materials, but it's a good little pad, not to promote iFixit, but they do support us on occasion with tool sets. So that's something to look at too, even just a parts bin. But yeah, it's very important if you break something down to keep mental notes. And you know, one of the things that I've liked with the Orion series, as well as the now I've already told you my memory's going bad. The printer that he's thinks the Rostock is that they do a really good job of providing illustrations and inventory. A build of materials, which is very important, so that you have an idea. You know, if you remember, and not taken away from the Castle Clear, it was a Kickstarter, a Delta printer. But Chris, you remember when we built that, they identified a certain type of screw, but they changed it midstream, and we're wondering, why are our screws too long? Why doesn't it fit right? So, I mean, these are things that they've ironed out further on, but you know, almost from the beginning, this group out of Ohio has worked really good. And we've had John on several times, and yeah, I think it's, you know, one of the reasons you bought one is because it's kind of like the LulzBot. It's just a great group of people wanting to put out a quality product that has a lot of documentation and a lot of support from the company themselves. Okay, so I guess I'll go on to my project. I've had several, but what's new on my part? One of them was the Neodia mount iPhone 6. For those of you who aren't familiar with it, I've created a special bracket that uses neodymium magnets in order to mount the structure sensors. So one of the things that I needed early on when I went to Thailand is the ability to pull off the sensor from the tablet very quickly, because I was going from one location to another, and I wanted also to make sure that I had a case which the structure sensor doesn't support. So I developed one, and they're just coming out with their iPhone 6 and 6 Plus software. So there are cases now that you can use to mount it, thanks to Chris. We've kind of beta tested some versions. So we're looking at producing these, and I think the occipital group is going to be picking them up and offering them in their kit form. So when you buy one, you get a selection of the Neodia mount cases. I also have a series that I work with, the noodle cases, which include a tripod mount for the iPad Mini and the Air. So that's what I've been working on. And let's see what else I've been working on. So there's going to be some, if you're into 3D scanning and you're familiar with the Skinex software, there is going to be some game-changing new control features, especially in the color arena, that I think you're going to be very pleased with. And if you have bought my 4 Eyes, you're going to find some even more spectacular features with that. But I can't say any more than that, otherwise they're going to come over and terminate me. And then finally, I am working on my own piece of app to work with my 4 Eyes lens system, which I kind of under crunch this weekend to have done. I'm working with a guy out of LA that'll be utilizing it for a project that he's working on that I can't talk about either, otherwise he'll come and terminate me. I probably already spoke too much, so I better run. So that's about my projects. So we're out of projects, and let's get into the products, and I'll go ahead and lead that off. Mine is Protopasta Conductive Filament. It came in finally. I haven't used it yet, but I only got a sample. We've had Dustin on before, and he was a great guest, and they make some material out of Vancouver, Washington. So this is it. And one of the things that we talked about in an interview, and I compared it to something that I bought on Amazon because I needed some conductive filament because I was making cases for a electrostatic sensitive device from a company out of Santa Barbara, is I noticed that the one that I was working with was extremely brittle, stiff, and now that I'm touching this, if you can see it, it is more flexible, so I'm looking at forward and using it. And the reason that I complained about is that other material kept jamming, and I've got a direct mount extruder. It kept jamming it, and I said, this is not worthwhile, and it was obviously money wasted. I don't remember the company on Amazon that sells it, but I would stay away from it. But this looks like it's going to be some good stuff. Next week I'll have something printed, and I'll let you know how it works. If you're not familiar with Protoplant or Protopasta, look them up. They've got some very interesting materials, and we have a YouTube video to go out and look at. We did an interview with them, and he talks about them. It's not only the conductive material, but they also have some metal materials. One of them that actually oxidizes like iron, so it kind of creates a rust experience, which I think is kind of neat if you're looking for that rust type look. So again, head out to our YouTube channel and look up Dustin from Protopasta and listen to him, and he's got some great things to talk about. So on that, you've got something to talk. Let's see if we got anybody else who's got some products, or am I the only one? I guess I'm the only one. So let's get into the Print Whisperer.
The
Chris?
Print Whisperer. The Print Whisperer has a tip for you. This is brought to you by Experience on the TAS 4. Let me see if I can pull up what I'm looking for here. There's a 5-pack. This is a good little tip. So, how do you get your ABS or some of these trickier materials to stay on the bed without warping? Right. That's the constant question that most people have, and here's what I have learned, and one of my favorite things is first off, you got to have your bed level. So it's got to be pretty perfectly level, and you got to have you got to watch your first few layers and make sure that you're not too close to the bed and not too far. And there's some guides. You can go out to the internet and you can Google depth from the bed or something like that to kind of get an idea of what your first contour should look like when it's getting laid down on the bed. I like to weigh a little bit on the squishy side so that it doesn't peel up. But the other big one on top of these PET sheets that you can find through different this is a 12 by 12 sheet, but it's just standard PET green sheets of tape, and so 5 of them are $30. So they're like $5 a piece, and I still have my I have my second one on now. So, and I've been printing on this thing for a couple months now. But on top of that, I put standard permanent glue stick, and I just put a nice layer of glue down on the bed on the PET, and I can print pretty gigantic pieces and not have to worry about them warping anymore, which is really nice because I was constantly battling that with trying to print directly on glass and doing the masking tape stuff and trying all these things that everybody was talking about in the forums. The best thing I found is this PET tape with standard 3M or Scotch permanent glue stick. That's my tip for the day.
I do something similar, Chris, except I work with a company called BuildTac, and I use that on it, and they seem to last for a while. I'm gonna replace mine probably next week. I ordered a few more. I have a tendency sometimes not to gauge my calibrations correctly, and my head gouges the pad. So hopefully I'll avoid that now that I'm not a newbie anymore. But I also use that glue, and I really like it. And that was something suggested to me a year ago, and I really work on it. John, what do you use to keep stuff adhered to the bed?
For PLA, what we end up doing, what we like using a lot, is using gaffer's tape. So on a lot of printers, they would recommend using blue painter's tape. But what we found, well, blue painter's tape with a thin layer of hairspray on it. What we found is that the print stuck just fine to the blue painter's tape. But what we were running into is the blue painter's tape would start getting peeled up from the print bed because the blue painter's tape adhesive is not terribly strong. So we switched over to using gaffer's tape with a thin layer of hairspray on it, and that works great for PLA. But ABS, we still haven't found the perfect solution. So I'm definitely going to give this a try because on our TAS we have that PET tape. What we've been doing is using that like a ABS and acetone slurry, and then coating the print bed with that. And then as the acetone evaporates, it leaves the ABS behind. But that it hasn't been. We have to recoat it about every 10 prints. So I'm definitely going to try out.
And it's not very user friendly. It's not very user friendly either. You know.
No.
The slurries are just they're a nightmare to clean, and it's messy, and you got chemicals. Acetone, you know, contrary to what anybody will tell you, is like just read the side of the acetone thing. You don't want to be exposing yourself to have this junk in your office.
Well, and I made the mistake. Yeah. I made the mistake once of taking so LulzBot includes a little plastic jar, and you put your ABS, some ABS filament in there, and then some acetone. I made the mistake of not having the lid tight enough when I decided to shake it. That was a fun experience. Acetone and ABS slurry kind of everywhere, which made a big mess.
God. It's got that cold to the touch, and it's like it's melting ABS. And you're breathing it, and I mean I've taken whiffs of the acetone that almost knocked me off my on accident. I was building one of those little chambers, trying to follow the YouTube of like, oh, here's a vapor bath, here's how you do the vapor bath, and I lift the lid, and I'm like looking in there, peeking in to see my part. Is it ready? And knocks me off my seat. Oh man! So now I have the respirator on and the goggles, and I have my lab coat with my gloves.
You should do that next time. Come in like that. That'll be funny.
Hey guys!
I totally agree with both of you. And you mentioned another comment too earlier, John, and that's having a contained printer. If you can control the environment as well, especially with ABS, that helps with the lifting. So I think all of these ideas would be great to work with. I actually use the glue stick with PLA on my build text, and it works fabulously. But there's another point to keep in mind. We work so hard to keep it on the bed, but sometimes too hard, and what do we use to get it off? And one of the tools, and actually I bring it up, there's a tool of that, but you've got something else that I swear by, and it's a little tool. That there, it's very, very thin. In fact, it could cut you if you jam yourself with it. And I just kind of wedge it underneath that until it breaks the surface of it. And that is my go-to tool. And it's like $15 on Amazon, but well worth it. And it just literally just kind of wedges through there. The other thing I found out, especially with PLA, make sure you let your bed cool, because you can actually distort your prints if you try to lift them up while it's still warm. So let them cool. That's contrary to some beliefs that others think try and release them when they're warm. But with that little tool from Amazon, you can wait till it gets completely cold. The other thing I do if I've got to rush something out is I've got a slab of marble that I put a part on that's super cold. Actually, in Fargo, I guess any surface would be super cold. But I put it on that, and then it immediately cools it down, especially if I need a flat surface. I just put it on that, and it ensures that any irregularities are smoothed out immediately, and then it's good to go. So keep that in mind. If it could be glass or something else, but a cooler surface sometimes helps accelerate keeping your parts from deforming at the time, because you put all that time. Some of these prints take so long. It's like one little thing that disrupts it, and you just cry. At least I've cried.
Yeah.
I have a little thing of tissues next to it when something doesn't go right. Okay. Well, on that note, one of the last things I like to go through is talk about updates in the past. I don't have the link up here, but there's a company, and I really want to appreciate what you did for us when I was at CES, because we had a couple of technical issues, but thanks to Chris being in his office there, he was running the studio, and he would actually go out to sites. And one of the places that he went out to that I didn't realize until I went through and reviewed the whole thing when I put it out the HD version is Spectrum 3D. I don't know if you guys have seen this, and it was one of my items for last week, but we ran out of time. This is really kind of neat, and I really want to see what they're going, and I've applied for their beta, but they've had overwhelming interest in it after CES, and let's see, I guess I should actually move to it. Sorry again. Great, thanks. But they appear, from what I can understand from the theory, is they're actually injecting dye directly into the print nozzle itself. So it's not like it's colored filament. It's actually being done afterwards. And it allows them some flexibility. I'll run the little video here. But if you notice, it looks like they're using an off-the-shelf, what's the model that they're using? You guys remember? Yeah, let's see if they bring it up here. A Robo 3D, and then I guess their little unit off to the side there. John, are you familiar with this? Have you seen
I've heard of it, but I haven't looked into it too much.
For the most part, I don't need color, but it would be really cool to be able to have color, because even though Shapeways has just introduced plastic color in full color, it would be kind of nice to be able to actually have this on your desktop without having to spend tens of thousands of dollars. So I hope that they are able to move forward with this and actually create a Kickstarter. I want to back it. I think that would be really cool. The other thing is it might be customizable for whatever printer you have. So you don't have to go out and buy a particular printer. So I'm hoping that would be the case, and then we could just retrofit.
Right.
But I'm looking forward to that. Yeah, actually up here it kind of shows in the icon of their color being injected into it. So, I've applied for their beta. Hopefully they'll accept me, and I'd like to talk more about that if I am accepted and see what happens with it. So that's something I just want to bring a little bit more to the attention. And then finally, the last thing that I bring up is, let me go out to it, is 3D printing, called Printing for Beginners. Have you been out to this site? One of the things that I like is that they have a nice calendar of events. So if you're into 3D printing and want to... Well, I didn't want to do that. What happened there? Did I click on some? There we go. So obviously they haven't removed their well, I guess it's still January, huh? But CES had really a great turnout. Did you get a chance to go to that, John? I noticed in some of your YouTube you kind of talked about it.
Yeah, we were at CES for three of the days. So we spent 2 of those days in the 3D printing section of the show floor. So it was interesting. It's nice being able to see what's coming up for the next year.
Yeah, and it actually, from what I've heard, is like 3 times larger than it was the year before. And XYZ had a huge presence with all kinds of goodies that we had an opportunity to look at. Ultimaker, who just wrote me just today, thanked us. And you know what? I don't have it in the notes, and I'm not going to. But if you go out to YouTube, they did a time lapse of their build out. I think I sent you a link to this, Chris. And damn that I don't have it available. Let's see if I can bring it up out of my channel.
Which build out?
Ultimaker did a time lapse.
Oh right, you were a star.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say that. But if you can bring that up while I'm going through this calendar, I'd like to end it with that. So if you can go back to one of my emails, Chris, and see if you can bring it up for me, please. It's really fun. They did a good job with the time lapse. In fact, they planned it so that they paused during some of the time lapses so that you could see them kind of in poses, which I thought was kind of fun. So they did like 1-second pauses as they were doing the time lapse. But they had a lot of people at their booths as well. John, have you ever worked with an Ultimaker?
No, I haven't, but it's something that we're very interested in being able to do. Yeah, I mean, I've heard nothing but good things about Ultimakers.
Yeah, I had one, but I had one of their first units, and I did, literally, it was almost right off the button. And I had a couple of issues, but the quality once I got it working is just amazing, and then the fit and finish of it is amazing as well. You know, you got some of these others, and not to take away from the TAS for others, the fit and finish. You know, this is almost a commercial type product, and they've really put a lot of effort into it. But the more important thing is, you can see them as they pause in the middle, is the commitment behind the company. You know, I had issues with it. They were immediately there, and again, they're from the Netherlands, but they were very responsive, less than 24 hours normally. And now that they have a support team in the United States that's helping them, that you can actually buy a machine from, I just want to give them a big plus. They've come a long ways. Again, a quality machine, but it still has its open source roots. I've worked with Cura. Cura is a decent, as you said, it's a very fast open source slicer that is geared to work with the MakerBot. Or not the Maker. Geez, what a bad word here. Delta Maker. No, I have a MakerBot as well, so no grievance. In fact, we were planning to do an interview with Jenny, their CEO, in the next couple of weeks. So.
Gotcha.
Yeah, there I am. I had an interesting get-up. I was able to do what I'm doing here. I had a Windows tablet, and I did a Google's On Air while I was there, so it was live. Quality wasn't the best, but it was the live presence. I had a dual gang system. I had a LT USB modem as well as the Wi-Fi there, so I had those double strapped, and it worked out pretty well. And then I had Chris in my ear, and he was able to see the whole thing virtually, so it was kind of a fun time.
Very cool.
So
awesome.
Thank you, Chris, for bringing that up. So what do we got coming up? This weekend we have Burbank. So let me jump back to my screen. We have Burbank. So now that I know that you're in Fargo, more than likely you're not attending that as well. Is that correct, John, or do you have somebody at 3D Printer World Expo?
So we don't have anyone there for this one. We were at the 3D Printer World Expo that was in Seattle back in August, I think it was. And no one at this one.
Okay. Yeah, it's kind of sad, and I'm hoping they do well, but I mean, CES had such a big presence in the 3D world. I'm wondering what their attendance will be at. But, you know, LA is a large city, and I do know that they get a lot of people in there. You know, another shout out I want to bring, and we had him on before, is Sculptress from Pixelogic. I don't know if you're familiar with it. They make ZBrush, which if you've seen any movie, Lord of the Rings, a lot of the characters were driven by that. Great artist. They're also moving into the 3D world, or 3D print world, and they're going to be doing a series of tutorials while at the show. So if you're in the LA area or in California and you want to go to a show that is going to have a good presence, and if you're a fan of Pixelogic, then head out and take a look. Pixelogic, yeah. They probably would appreciate that.
Well, I think we're ready to wrap it up. Thanks to all our listeners. Thanks, John, so much for joining us all the way from Fargo, North Dakota. Give us your website one more time.
Fargo3dprinting.com. And thanks again for having me.
Yeah.
And you also have a YouTube channel, so don't forget about that. And your YouTube channel name?
Fargo 3D Printing. So pretty
awesome. Well, we will see you next week on All Things 3D.
Bye.